Thank you, Sam, and I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. This is the first time that I'm jumping out of the gate on this one, so I'm hoping that everything's going to work out time-wise the way that it should, and we're going to have time to take a few minutes to review. There's a policy template that was promised and was given to you in a Word format, and when we get to the appropriate spot, we probably are going to stop and look over some of the highlights of that just so I can discuss it, because there are sometimes issues with banks using template policies for social media, and it's something that I wrote. It's not the gospel according to the social networking gods, but I think it would be a pretty good template to use either as a starter document. A lot of banks are just now looking at getting on social media or formalizing on social media. So it would be a good starter document for that. And if you're already on social media and have a policy, then it's one that you can compare against what you have and determine, is this, are there clauses here that we want to add, or is there something in our existing policy we want to delete, or do we not want to use that policy? The choice is absolutely up to you. Now, today's focus is really going to be a lot on the bank's controlling aspects. I came up as a compliance officer in a bank. I'm not a naysayer for use of social media or social networking. I use the terms interchangeably. I need to make sure that everybody understands that. I don't see a real distinction between social media and social networking, much the same as the terms marketing and advertising. To some people, they have exactly different definitions. To me, not so much. So I use those terms pretty interchangeably, and I think in the template policy I may have used social media, whereas in the materials that you have prepared for you, I think I use social networking more so in there throughout that particular document. But what I'm going to talk about is the different types that we have out there, and it's important to recognize that the internet is changing so fast that when MySpace was a very popular product a few years ago, it's almost passé now, and everything is Facebook. And with Facebook's IPO, people are saying between privacy policies and their botched IPO and the declining price that they're going to go out and Google Plus or somebody else is going to come in as number one. So things change. So we're going to look at some of the types of social networking that are out there, at least in today's environment. We're going to talk about the math to be informed, because I don't want people to ever sit back and think, well, we need to be on social networking, and I'm going to talk to management because there's just millions and millions of potential customers out there. Well, that may not necessarily be the case, because you need to look at your market area, and we're going to look at the math and kind of whittle down. The purpose in looking at the math is largely to give you an idea of where you would stand within your institution, and then to decide how much work are we going to put into this, because many institutions think that social networking is what we thought of email a couple years ago. Oh, it's an informal means of communication. It's not official. It's not like it's going to have any legally binding attributes. Whereas we begin to find out now that, hey, it can be used as a primary source of communication, and it can have legally binding attributes. Well, a lot of institutions are looking at social networking as though this is something that we can just flippantly do, and you can't. We're going to look at a lot of the security and compliance aspects that say this is serious stuff and it has to be done right. When you do the math, you will sit back and say, let's look at our demographics in our area for the customers that we want to service, because you're not going to service everybody on the internet. I'll guarantee that that's not going to be in your bank's CRA statement that says everybody throughout the entire world who can connect to the internet, from Fiji to South America to Finland, those are all going to be our customers, because that's not going to be the case. Nobody's after that. So boil it down to what market area are you really trying to service, and then let's look at the demographics for those areas And when you come down and look at it and say, okay, if we get into this and we really do it seriously, we're going to spend 10 hours a week on it. Well, we're going to reach 300 customers. Is it worth 10 hours of work a week to reach 300 customers? And those are decisions that you're going to have to make in your institution. But that's the reason we want to look at the math, is so that you can be informed and talk to management, and don't leave this pie in the sky thing that says, we're going to reach millions and millions of people. There are advertising and retention rules, and I'll probably say this more than once. The good news is we don't have specific rules for the electronic environment in many cases. The bad news is we don't have specific rules for many of these compliance requirements. So when we talk about advertising and retention, there are some things that are specific to the electronic world, but largely you're going to find what applies in the paper world is what's going to apply in the virtual world. The same will tie to complaints and security. How long would you retain a particular document? How would you handle a complaint? What if you had a security issue with an employee? If it was on paper, how would you handle it? If it was on the electronic environment, how would you handle it? There's not a lot of differences in many cases. You're going to have the same kind of policy that's going to say, here's how we're going to handle this. But when there are differences, you want to denote those. And that's where your policy comes in. Your policy is going to help guide you as far as what's our goal on social media? What do we want to do? Where do we want to go with this? What kind of information are we going to provide? Are we providing it to? And how quickly are we going to be able to provide this stuff? Now, again, I'm going to focus largely on compliance and security type issues. Mary Beth Gard, and I forget the name of the other presenter, it's the first time that she's ever presented with us, I believe. On July 18th, they have a program coming up that's going to discuss, I think, some of the positive attributes, the marketing issues, the things, the good fluff stuff that says, here's why we really need to get into this, here's how we can go in and maintenance files, and here's how we would post photos and these kind of things. So there's a lot more to it, but recognize that these two programs are going to be different and they will meet different needs. If after today you sit back and say, this is something that I think we could deal with, we can deal with the cost, the compliance issues that we would have to work with, but let's look at those other issues, the ones that you get to smile about and put on that perky face and say, this is a good thing. We were going to deal with these folks on social media. And that's where that other webinar would really come in. It would provide you with a lot of that type of information. I also want to say at